Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
This episode is brought to you by Columbia Sportswear. It's snowing again, and that wind chill is killer. But you're not worried about that because you shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection. It's warmth perfected with tiny gold dots that reflect your body heat inside and protect you from the cold outside. No snow or chilly temps can stop you now. Go out anyway. Shop the Omni Heat Infinity Collection now at Columbia.com/infinity.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
Just like that, we are already 2 weeks into the new Serie A season. This is Nicky recording on Sunday night for Mina and Chronicles Tifosi. This is our new little project we've got going at Serie A Chronicles, where we do our Serie A postcards back and forth to each other, reflecting on the week's events. And yeah, I'm kicking things off this week. I think it's really funny to me right now, thinking back to how we debuted last week, and there were lots of knee-jerk reactions, lots of enthusiastic excitement about the way some teams have started. And it's just hard for me not to laugh about some of it now, because look, Mina and I have both been covering Italian football for a very long time. We've been doing this for nearly decades, and really like Juventus winning 3-0 against Udinese and then coming crashing back down to earth with this 1-0 draw against Bologna. Well, it doesn't take a very long memory to remember the last time it happened like this. We should have known better. Literally last season, Juventus won their first game 3-0 against Sassuolo, only to draw the second one 0-0 against Sampdoria. So everything I was saying last week about how I appreciated the zip and the aggression in the way they were playing, perhaps I should have known better. But I don't want to sort of go into a big Juventus conversation to start this postcard. I actually want to talk more about some other teams. I do want to say quickly that Juventus Bologna game, and maybe Mina will want to expand on this. Mina, do pick up on this if you think there's things you want to say about it. I think this was a game definitely defined by some iffy refereeing decisions. The interview with Bologna manager Thiago Motta at the end of it, where DAZN ask him about the refereeing, and he just stares blankly, and you can see he's trying to formulate exactly how he diplomatically wants to phrase this thought. And the DAZN interviewer eventually sort of saves him and go, do you know what, why don't we talk about the game? And Motta looks so relieved and happy. I think maybe that captures it better than I can. But yeah, I want to talk about Milan. I think unlike Juventus, I think the knee-jerk reactions with Milan perhaps were a little bit more justified. A really impressive 4-1 win against Torino this weekend. And of course, we're going to be talking, it looks like, more and more about Christian Pulisic, who scored again. Of course, he's the first American-born man to start for Milan at all. And what a start it's been. I think the goal is not just about him at all. I actually think that what's so neat about it, what's so encouraging from a Milan perspective, is the way the play accelerated through Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And of course, we're going to talk about old Chelsea connections, right? We're going to talk about players who know each other from Stamford Bridge. We're going to talk about that understanding that they bring. And I think when you're integrating into a new team, that's just hugely valuable. I think that allows Pulisic and Loftus-Cheek to hit the ground running more effectively, because they've got automatisms, they've got movements they already understand from each other. So I think that is kind of the obvious part of that. And that, is that a short-term benefit or is that a long-term benefit? That's a question that we'll have to see in the weeks ahead, because that's something that helps you get going, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the best forever. And of course, these are players who Chelsea cast aside as well. So, but it was really encouraging for Milan to see that clicking and working so soon. And I think it was really indicative. I think so much in this game was really indicative of how Milan have wanted to be different. Stefano Pioli, after the game, said that in this transfer window, he asked for two things. He said, I asked for wide players who can do one-on-ones, and I asked for midfielders who can do inserimenti, who can break the lines. And in that moment, you're seeing two of the players who were signed specifically for those briefs. Pulisic is a wide player. He's also been playing sometimes through the middle, but he's a wide player who can go one-on-one against a defender. And Loftus-Cheek is a central midfielder who can inserirsi, who can make those runs and break the lines. And I think it really is a clear vision of the identity that Stefano Pioli has for this team. And I think it's always been his vision for this team. I think it was the same last season with Leao, with Theo Hernandez, but he wants a team that's punishingly direct, that knows how to go straight for the jugular, that knows how to, do those partenze, as Antonio Conte would have called it as Inter, never calling it contropiede, never calling it counterattacks, but those rapid accelerations, the rapid breaks, fast break football. I think that's definitely the vision that Pioli has for Milan. It's interesting hearing how he sort of defined the rationale for that. I think he said for him, wanting those players who could do one-on-ones was about dealing with opponents who try and sit deep and frustrate you. Having wide players who can just dribble, who can take someone on, allows you to break down packed defences. But actually, I do think sometimes that sort of fast break football works better against open teams. And when teams do sit deep, you need something more than just the directness. You need something more than just the straight line effectiveness. But look, it's a really promising start. Obviously, Torino have been an extremely effective defensive team under Ivan Juric. I've got some worries for them with the way they've started. But you can't ask for much more than this from Milan, can you? And obviously, it's not just Loftus-Cheek and Pulisic. It's also Reinders, who's fit into that midfield extremely well right away. We're still waiting to see, I think, the best of Chukwueze, who seems to be the one who is starting from the bench at the moment. But I think there's all sorts of reasons to feel good about how that can develop. And of course, we also got the reminder in this game of Theo Hernandez and what he can do and lay out. Everything about it was great. Olivier Giroud, by the way, who I feel like every summer I'm on this show and everywhere else going, like, I love Giroud. Honestly, you're not going to find many people out there who love Giroud more than I do. But, he's another year older. Can he really still be the guy for this team? Maybe he can. Maybe he just will forever. Maybe it's going to be until he's into his 40s and beyond. But of course, he certainly looks as sharp as they could want him to at the top of the formation. So really encouraging start from Milan. If I have any questions about them, it is still what I just alluded to. Okay, I hear what Pioli is saying. I hear his rationale, but actually will this work against really packed down defences? I think that's still to be proven. They are going to face much tougher games than this one. And I think the other big concern, and Mina and I talked about this in pre-season, is the defending. The way they went from 1-0 up to conceding that counterpunch almost immediately is a worry. In this game, it didn't matter because they just were able to keep coming, but it may be a worry in the future. So brilliant start for Milan. A brilliant start for Verona as well. That's not something I expected to be saying. Verona, who had, I think, 5 points after 15 games last season, ended the season in a relegation playout. That famous relegation playout against Spezia, something that was a result of the new rules introduced in Serie A to bring back head-to-head tiebreakers for teams contesting relegation. So they ended the season that way. They bring in Baroni, who, of course, is the manager who kept Lecce up last season and did a great job there. Really, Lecce was with a brand of football that was never aiming to entertain you. It was punishingly, brutally, we are just about defending and shutting down games as much as we can and getting the one goal that gets us across the line. Well, it's been a bit different to that so far at Verona. It was certainly not an ambitious swashbuckling performance against Roma. I think Verona had about 28% of possession, but it was nevertheless a game in which they showed they could be dangerous going forward. Cyril Ngonge, who of course scored those vital goals in the relegation playout with a star turn. I don't know what to make of this, honestly. I think, again, we're still in the very dangerous territory of knees that can jerk too quickly. But look, if you were in a relegation playout last season and had 5 points after 15 games, you've already got more than that after 2 games. It's a very encouraging start. And Baroni, as I said, did a brilliant job at Lecce last season, keeping them afloat. So great on their end. On the Roma end, of course, we're going to be talking, I'm going to say confidently now, Mina, you and I, when we get together at Sky Sports News tomorrow for our, day after tomorrow. I'm recording this on Sunday night, so Tuesday, although it's pretty close to midnight now. So nearly, I'm recording this on Monday. On Tuesday, when we get together at Sky Sports News, I'm pretty certain we're going to be talking about Romelu Lukaku. Again, this story that he could end up at Roma goes on and on. This interview got picked up where he was back in Belgium, and he said about, I'm going to Rome tomorrow to start contracts. And I think that was a light-hearted reference, but the deal has very much got legs. And I said this actually on the continent this week. It's one of those deals where it couldn't really have happened earlier in the transfer window. Earlier in the transfer window, Chelsea had bigger ideas about how much money they were going to get for Lukaku. Lukaku had bigger ideas about what he wanted to end up. Obviously, he was talking to Juventus. There were other conversations with Inter. But actually, it could end up being the perfect fit for everybody, I think. I think Lukaku, as we've talked about over and over again, Mina, is someone who needs to be loved, someone who I think his greatest need is to sort of be in an environment where they prize him and want him to succeed and are willing to build things around him. And I think given the striker situation in Rome, they would. I think Mourinho absolutely would do that. I think the fans would go crazy for him because, as we saw with Dybala signing last summer, those fans will get behind you. They will give you what you give to them. So I think it would be a great fit from that perspective. And I think he would get what he wants, which is lots and lots of games. I thought Belotti actually had a pretty solid game against Verona, even though it was a game that didn't end the way they wanted it to. I thought he was committed in the same way he had been in the opening weekend. He showed the same aggression, that same striking instinct to get into the right places. He did obviously get the assist on the goal. So I thought it was a not completely disastrous from every single perspective game. You don't have to see only the negatives. I thought Belotti was okay, but Lukaku will go straight into that team and be productive. So watch this space for that one. Mina, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on Lukaku and Roma. I think it's a good fit. And as I say, it's a deal that couldn't have happened earlier in the transfer window because of the financial side of it. Whereas now I think Chelsea have realised there's no time left and they might be willing to cut a deal on a loan just to get him off their books. So that's the two things that are top of my list to talk about just now. I'm sure there was something else I was going to say in this postcard. I'm just going to check my notes very quickly that I've got right next to me in case there was something else. I'm sure there was something else I had. The other big winner I want to talk about, I can't believe we haven't talked about them more, opening weekend, Napoli. I don't know how I've forgotten that because I literally just finished watching them Sunday night. Brain's a little bit fried. But yes, of course, 2-0 win over Sassuolo. It's nothing remarkable. These are games that you expect Napoli to win with their quality. But we did talk in pre-season, Mina, about, are we convinced by Rudy Garcia? Are we sure this team is going to be able to go to the levels that it did again? And I'm still not sure. It's still far too early to say that. But what is clear is Victor Osimhen is still Victor Osimhen. They had something like 28 shots in this game. So they were all over Sassuolo. It was a non-contest, and that's encouraging, obviously, again. It's not a foregone conclusion that you get this level of dominance. Rudy Garcia at the end saying the only thing he didn't like was they weren't more than one target, which is true. But the other part of this was Kvaratskhelia, of course, coming back to full health. I think he was on the pitch for 3 minutes. Was it 4 minutes before he got his assist? So look, the pieces are all fitting together quite nicely for now for Rudy Garcia at Napoli. We're still way too early to know the real story there. We've got some big matchups coming in Serie A fairly soon, actually. But for now, it's Napoli winning games you expect them to win. It's a team that's got the same familiarities from last season. Players who know each other, know how to look for each other. So I'm not yet at the point of going, oh yes, Rudy Garcia is going to do just fine, but definitely an encouraging start for them. So I thought those were my three big winners this week. I thought Milan, and especially Pulisic probably the biggest standout for me this week. Verona and Napoli, just because they're getting the ball rolling as they would want to. I'd love to hear who you thought your big winners of the week were, Mina. I'd love to know which stories jumped out to you this week. Those were three that jumped out to me. I'd love to hear your take on Juventus. I'm sorry, I don't want to always sort of pigeonhole you into being, let's hear what Mina thinks about Juventus. But I do want to hear that. Yes, I think that's it from me. I've realised that I'm just relieved that I've been able to talk about football for 15 minutes without getting incredibly furious as I was for the first part of the weekend with the whole Rubiales story. But that is a different story, and I won't go into that now, otherwise producer Simon will kill me for making this note way too long. So Mina, let me know what you made of the weekend and what stories you're most excited about going into this new week.
Hi Nikki, how are you? Hello to everyone on Serie A Chronicles. This is my postcard about the goings on in Serie A this weekend. Let me start this off by saying that basically I haven't left the house in 48 hours and you're going to think that's crazy, but basically I went out on Friday night, right? And I didn't come home till 5:30 in the morning. It wasn't like I was partying, believe me, most of the time I was involved in these really deep conversations about the point of life, which I feel like you have to have when you hit an old age. And went home and the sun was going up. I was so tired for the next 48 hours. I couldn't move. You don't understand how to do this show on Saturday night. I genuinely thought I was dying at that point. I mean, it was one of those where I was soft crying. Of course there was a part of me that sort of wanted to switch off a little bit this weekend as well, because Rubiales just took a lot out of me. That conversation is so horrible. Maybe it's one that we should have anyway in Serie A, for you and I when we talk together tomorrow at Sky on Tuesday, because I did the EuroLeagues podcast for the BBC on Thursday night, and obviously they asked me the first question, which was about him and my thoughts on it. And I sort of didn't realize that I talked for about 10 minutes on a monologue. And I had a bit of a nervous breakdown about just women in general. And I know, and I was anyway, listen to it if you want to. I'm not going to repeat it on here now, but it was just a case of sometimes we don't always want to talk about women because we believe in feminism and we want to fight about all of those. It's just, sometimes you kind of just want to disappear in life, and I sort of wanted to disappear for this weekend, protect myself a little from the madness of going out till 5:30 in the morning. It wasn't a nightclub or anything like that. It was just at a friend's house, so really nothing special. But either way, it was a special weekend because I think that we've realized a couple of things, which is one, Milan is stupendous and I'm a little bit scared of them going forward. And Juventus, did we get too excited too quickly? And Hellas Verona, I'm kind of a little bit happy about this because here's the thing. Yeah, I do a betting show. And we had to choose who we thought we were going to be relegated. And some flash chose Hellas Verona. And I was really upset by this. I was like, Verona, I understand the choice, but they have Marco Baroni. And I just feel like they're a team that really knows how to regenerate. And I just don't know why you think that about them. And he was like, no, they don't score enough goals. We saw their problems all last year, blah, blah, blah. They have one side of playing. I don't believe in them. They lost Temesi and all of that. And then they come out with these, maximum points in 2 rounds. And more than anything, I'm just happy to have been right about this. I imagine they're still relegated at the end of the season. But either way, okay. I was going to start with them, but actually, no, let us start with Verona in general. I'm not entirely sure whether they're just a team right now that is brilliant, or that they've just come up against sides that haven't always given them or allowed them perhaps to shine under, not expected them to show the brilliance that they have so far, which is a team that is just a little bit more attack-minded like they used to be, which we didn't see all of last season. They were that side under Juric. They were that side under Igor Tudor. Last season, to me, was just a little bit of an absurdity because you expect better from them. But they did struggle in really getting those goals. I guess they're not the conversation as much as perhaps Roma is in that match. And that was what I found so surprising from Roma, is just that defensive solidity is entirely gone. And the one thing you imagine is that Smalling is your man. Like, Smalling is going to rescue you. But he's made now 2 mistakes in 2 games, which is something unheard of for Smalling. It doesn't help when you've lost Matic, right? Like, Matic and Cristante created that great sort of filter in midfield. And you know what I'm like. I'm always somebody who feels like your midfield is basically maybe 60% of your defense. And I think that togetherness in the midfield sort of helped protect. And then you have somebody like Smalling, and then you had the pace of Ibanez. I know that people don't love him. I liked him. I do feel like his loss wasn't talked about enough. And I think that, yes, he makes mistakes, but he does have speed to recover. And that speed right now is missing at the back. You don't have Matic, and you chose Paredes, which goes to show you exactly why Juventus didn't like him and why PSG didn't like him. And now you're sort of seeing that the duality of the role, which is something that you have to understand as a midfielder, he doesn't really get. And how could you not start Houssem Aouar, who I thought was so good in the first game? And he's somebody who's mobile, he's intelligent with his movements. So happy for him that he got the goal. I feel a little bit sorry for Belotti, because I do think that there was a red card, right? Because he was through on goal, and I think that he could have made the difference. Roma had 72% possession. They were going forward as much as possible. But unfortunately for them, missing that killer strike, Lorenzo Pellegrini obviously hit the crossbar, had that great chance that he couldn't convert. It went just wide. Honestly, I find it amazing that they lost this match. I don't think they did. People have been really harsh about Roma, but actually I've seen a lot of things about them that makes me think they're going to score a lot more goals this season. And this is even without a striker that they're probably going to get in Lukaku, and they've got now Azmoun as well. And hopefully Belotti back to his best at some point. But I think it's defensively where the problems are, which is really weird to see. Mourinho not on the sidelines, and this is something that he's going to have to think about, because it needs to be a better midfield right now, one that really protects the back line. And also, it was just so weird with Verona, right? Like it's like a narrow defense, and then you have like Tereciano, and it's like flying on the wings, right? And nobody's there to stop anything. So, and you're just thinking, it's so easy for Verona to attack down the right flank. So that's something that they probably need to address as well, Roma. So a lot of defensive problems there for them, which is something you never expect from Mourinho's side, but it's still early season and you expect that that's something that they will be able to fix. I'm just excited to see whether this is a Roma side that could score quite a few goals this season. I'm not down and out, but I do feel like there are just a few things for them that's probably going to need to be resolved. Meanwhile, I think Marco Baroni has already done tremendously for Verona. Perhaps they're not exactly a side that have like all these complexities in the way that they're attacking the game right now. They're very good at exposing weaknesses and being very, very vertical. And I thought that was really fun to watch, because for me, I love vertical football. And I just feel like he did such a great job at Lecce last season. And he wanted to have this experience. He wanted to move to Verona and do something special. And I think that mostly what he's done really well at Verona is change the attitude of the club, sort of take it back to what it used to be, which is the side that causes problems, which is the side that likes to attack and is interested to attack and is not fearful of an attack. And I think that's what we got with Verona at the moment. So, Ngonge, God, his goal was, for me, it was like a thing of beauty, because it reminds me sort of Juve when they're very vertical, and I love to see it. Rui Patricio, gosh, look at this, 23 shots for Roma, 7 on target, 72% possession and 12 corners. Can you imagine? They hit the crossbar twice. Oh, so many chances missed. Honestly, so many chances missed. Another question I put down here is, everyone's talked about strikers and they've got a bunch now, but do they have enough defenders? Yeah, that's actually something that it's true. How is this possible? Do they? You also asked me about good old Juventus. Did we get too excited in the first round? You're going to think I'm crazy, but is this... I mean, one thing I tweeted out was, oh, there you are, Juventus, the familiar one that makes me sad. I want to cry. And I do think that there are problems with this midfield. It's something that I thought about in Udinese. I was just thinking to myself, like, if this midfield is quashed and there's not enough pace on the wings, then do we have enough to create? And I have my issues with Chiesa because we know that Vlahovic can't play with his back to goal. And I just feel like he needs a lot of support. He needs a lot of players around him that, ball to feet, a good cross, something, just someone that he can duet with, that he can have a conversation with. And when Chiesa is widening too often, I just feel like he's then forced to play with his back to goal. And then we see Vlahovic being exposed for the things that he cannot do rather than the things that he can. And so that's a problem that also Allegri needs to address, because it looks like Chiesa is not that interested in playing through the centre. He's always going to widen. And the question is that, well, the question that somebody wrote to me on Twitter is, I think it was Raul who messaged me on Twitter, and he said, the first thing to do is drop Alexandro and play a 4-4-2 and have like Iling-Junior, for example, start. And I can see that, because for me, there's one player that I would not sell at all at Juventus, and I know that everyone loves Chiesa and everyone loves Vlahovic and everyone loves Locatelli and everyone loves everyone, but I really, really love Iling-Junior. Now, I should caveat this with, I don't know how to spot talent that well. I'm not somebody who's very good at judging players, okay? I've gotten it wrong so many times. But Iling-Junior for me is he's just one player that I would rather sell the entire team and keep him than sell him. So the fact that he was on the transfer market killed me. And I just love that when he comes on, he nearly gave away a penalty. He perhaps should have given away a penalty and been sent off. That's a question mark that I want to ask you. How do you think the refereeing was in this game? But he is somebody that is just... I always trust him to make an impact. Every time he comes on, he makes an impact. And a large reason why he also made an impact is because we also brought on Pogba in midfield. And I think being able to pass that ball forward and allow that attack to sort of take on when perhaps Bologna didn't have as many defenders in place as they usually do, was something that made the difference as well. This was a match in which I don't think Juventus were at their best. I think you can see sometimes, how you can defend them. But I think it's also a game in which we need to applaud Bologna for studying them so well. And I think they watched that first match against Udinese, saw all the problems, saw what they like to do with their suffocating style of play, of the high press, of working the channels, and thought, this is what we need to stop. And I think they did that fabulously well. And Bologna deserve a lot of plaudits. That first half was a thing of beauty of them. The physicality, the desire to win the duels, the desire to block the channels, their own attacking play was just brilliant. And for a team that I was asking all these types of questions of whether they were missing out on Arnautovic or Schutten or whatever, this was a fabulous performance. And this is why Thiago Motta is so highly rated. And they could have won this match if, like I said, that referee decided to give them the penalty and a red card for it, had Iling-Junior been sent off. On the other hand, I think that even with how hard it was for Juventus, Rabiot not being offside, that's an equaliser, Vlahovic getting the second goal, you never know. I just feel like it was a really exciting match to watch, perhaps, because you could see the tactics, the brilliant studying of Thiago Motta and Bologna in general, who I expected this performance from them against Milan that I didn't see. And then also the aggressiveness of Juventus, who recovered in the second half, that Vlahovic insisting on doing something, his attitude was really on point. So I don't know. I thought it was a good match. It was a solid challenge between two sides that I haven't necessarily seen so far. There hasn't been a solid challenge, let's say, for Milan. And so I want to see how that develops. Milan, however, my question to you is that first penalty, what do you think about the handball? Wow, Pulisic is on another level at the moment. I don't know what to make of this because I had so many question marks about this team defensively, but going forward, the midfield in general, the chemistry between Loftus-Cheek and Pulisic and Giroud, Leao and Theo. Leao, when he's on form, I mean, this team can attack with so many players. And if this doesn't convince me that Stefano Pioli is the best Italian coach, then I don't know. I mean, I'm a big fan of Allegri, but I've been a huge fan of Stefano Pioli throughout his career. And the way that he has managed to get this team that's had so many new arrivals just blend so seamlessly and embed themselves within the tactics is just fantastic to watch. For me, Milan look right now like they're the biggest. Well, Inter's going to play tonight, and Napoli I haven't talked about. I will talk about later, but Milan is right now for me like the toughest team. But I still don't know how to judge it because defensively they haven't actually been challenged. They faced a Torino side that has no attack. I mean, we saw that against Cagliari. They're just simply really poor going forward, and it was awful for them when they lost Sanabria as well. So do they have enough to really challenge that backline? Because I'm not that sure of Milan's defense, and it hasn't really been tested. So I don't know what to make of them. So when that happens, Bologna again in the first match didn't really have an attack either. The way they played at Juventus was nowhere near how they played against Milan. So I'd like to see what Milan would do against a better attack. I'd like to see them against teams that, let's say, can create a little bit of damage going forward. And then I can have a better idea of what I think of them. Napoli is Napoli, but I like the formation change at the end. Osimhen with Simeone. Do you think they can win it, Nicky? And my other question is, what do you think of Milan's defense? Hello and welcome to the Serie A Chronicles podcast. We're actually together because we're doing a show and it's, I think, our final show of the transfer season.
We've done 6. I'm holding up 10 fingers. We've done 6, she says, holding up 10 fingers.
I thought we did 5. Did we do 5?
I think we did 6 this window. Yeah, so we've been on Sky Sports News every week talking about transfers.
One of us is wrong.
That's over now.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd do at least one.
And we don't see each other because we live far from each other, so it's annoying.
It's sad.
And we are trying this whole new way. I wonder how you guys feel about this new style of the podcast. I know some of you are not into it. I know others are. So let us know what you think, because there's a part of us that obviously loves talking to each other, but is trying to get so many different people from different places together at the same time. So either way, let's not bore you with the details. Let's get straight to football so that we have enough time because, we can't stay here all day and do a whole hour. And I thought that we should start off by talking about Inter 2-0 against Cagliari.
Yes.
Lautaro Martinez seems to be really showing us what a great striker is. Him or Osimhen?
Oh, Osimhen, 100%. First of all, I think Lautaro has like a record of always scoring against Cagliari. I think he's 9 goals he scored against them now. They're like his favourite victim, which I feel like that conversation happens in Italy much more than in England. Like the favourite victim conversation is very like had in the Italian newspapers, but that's by the by.
Yeah, that's true actually.
Lautaro is brilliant, obviously. The question with Lautaro, as we also always know, is not how will he do when he's in his good moments, but will there be an 8-game patch at some point where he doesn't score at all? That's always the thing that we go through with Lautaro. And if he can get through a whole season without having a long run like that, that will be the real difference for Inter. But he's very good. I think Inter look very good. I think they've reminded us, or reminded me at least in these first few weeks of the season, that Champions League final, definitely not a fluke, right? And I think some of those mechanisms that we've seen working, the connections down the left, Di Marco, who I loved so much, is his growth. I was a real Di Marco skeptic at first when Inzaghi was pushing him into the team more. Not that I thought he was terrible, but I didn't think he was necessarily going to be this.
But a lot of people was, so you weren't the only one.
And I'm complete convert now. I love him, and I think that.
Dumfries is good too, no?
Yeah, Dumfries had a good game. I'm more sceptical on Dumfries' ceiling, but
of course, yeah.
But I really liked Marcus Thuram in this game as well. He needs to score, obviously, at some point. But his work around the area, his physicality, I think he looks like very early still, but tentatively looks like he could be a really nice signing for them.
Yeah, I think that he offers something unusual. People were worried about, obviously, the loss of Edin Dzeko. But I think that you're seeing like the options that Inter have up front, and you're not that worried anymore about them really scoring goals. And the fact is that they've walked away with another clean sheet. So it's... Initially, that was actually my fear, was how they were going to cope defensively, mostly, just because of what we saw from them last season and how many goals they conceded, right?
Yeah.
It takes a while sometimes for them to find their rhythms defensively. So I think it's impressive right now that they're making things look very clean and just, get the results, move on. And sometimes you feel like there's always a bit of chaos and drama into it's just not looking that way. It's very early.
I'm not sure I'm sold that the drama's gone just yet. I mean, the 2-0 wins, but even in this game, they weren't flawless defensively. Cagliari had some chances. I think we're yet to see the game where Yann Sommer is really tested. I think he's been fine through 2 games, but I think I can't form a realistic judgment on him after 2 games. And I think that...
I have a bit of my hand on my heart when I watch him.
It's absolutely not the calibre of player you want to be replacing with if you are aspiring to be a Champions League finalist every season. I think that's reasonable to say. You're signing a reserve goalkeeper, and you're not a young reserve goalkeeper where you think the future is ahead of them, someone who's 34 years old. I think that's a definite area of possible weakness for Inter, and we'll find out later in the season whether or not that's a real weakness. But I think broadly, I do feel like what I said before, Inter have reminded me why they were in a Champions League final, but the questions around them are actually not about their first 11. The questions around them are, is their depth good enough? Because they've lost some depth. Is Yann Sommer good enough? And I think, as you've said, is the defence going to be good enough, especially when such a pillar of that defence getting better last season was Acerbi, who's still there, but he wasn't young last season and it's another year on the mix.
How hard to change this if he comes. I think he'll be a great injection of exactly what it is that they need. But the question is that will they get him? Because the alternatives are not exciting at all. I feel like I probably should speak a bit louder when I'm here, but I do worry about the alternatives if he is not the one that arrives. But speaking of defence, do you... Just to clarify for people, we're recording this on Tuesday in the morning, and the deadline notionally has been set at 2 p.m. for that deal to be done. So by the time you're listening to that, you'll probably know, but we don't, so it's hard to comment on. So last year, I think what a lot of teams had was a problem with a striker. They didn't necessarily have great strikers. That was what we felt. There was Vlahovic at Juventus having problems. You wondered at the time with Lukaku's early season form, and then Lautaro Martinez being streaky. Osimhen is obviously Osimhen, and that's why Napoli won it. Milan were too reliant on Giroud, no alternatives. Those are the questions. This year, I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit worried about the defenders. I think that there's a lot of teams right now that I look at their defense and I think I'm not sure how capable they are, not just of defending, but of what they can do as well in terms of playing the ball out from the back, how comfortable they are on the ball. Milan, everyone's talking about them as early season favourites for the Scudetto because naturally Pioli's done such a tremendous job, right? They've done so well starting the season and so much depth. Like when you think that you can take off Pulisic and introduce Chukwueze or Okafor or Reinders has just been amazing in midfield. It's just there's so much beauty in that team. But then you think they haven't really been tested against a great attack. Yeah. Like Torino is not a great attack. And Bologna really struggled because the first game of the season, so Motta doesn't do what Motta does well, which is study opponents like he did against Juventus. Do you trust that defence going forward? Do you trust Juventus's defence? Also, are they comfortable on the ball? Because they really... That was what Bonucci did so well. And they don't have Bonucci anymore. Yeah. And do they have another guy that can do that, Yeah. And so how are they moving the ball? Because you can see the problems with that for them in their second match. Because Udinese is Udinese, right? They're not exactly the toughest opponent. But Bologna really shut down the channels. Yeah, so to answer your question about defences, in order, let's answer. So do I trust Milan's defence? No. Do I trust Juventus' defence? No. Do I trust Inter's defence? No. So we can just go no. What about Napoli? Not yet. I think that Kim is a really, really big piece to take out of that defence, and
again, we haven't seen the big games for these teams yet. These teams haven't been put to the real test yet. We're 2 games in. So all of the teams at the top of the table, I have questions about their defending, and you could take that further down to the Rome clubs as well. Roma haven't started looking particularly stable. I actually thought you made a really important point about the midfield in your voice note this week, and not having that platform that they've been able to rely on, but Chris Smalling making some mistakes as well. Lazio have been a disaster to start this season, so that's its own story. There isn't a team at the top who I'm looking at and feeling very, very confident they're defending right now.
Who do you trust to get it together?
I don't know if I do. That's the problem. We're still at that point, which we said in the pre-season previews. I don't fully trust Napoli because of Rudy Garcia. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I don't.
But people seem to be quite harsh on him defensively, you know. But I do feel that I liked his defense at Roma. So I think that he's quite good at achieving balance.
But he had a great midfield platform. You know, that's the midfield of Struveman and Giallorossi, and, you know, that sort of powerful 3-man midfield when Nainggolan was there as well. We thought that was a really great midfield.
And it was at the very peak of, oh my God, I forgot his name. Mehdi Benatia. And the one afterwards who had the head injury. God, what is wrong with me? I'm losing everything. This is what happens when you get old. But I feel like at the time he had a great defense, and you're right, he had a great midfield. But I do think Anguissa, having him in midfield, Lobotka who can hold on the ball, it's a good midfield as well.
I think what's super encouraging for Napoli is they've started the season well, and they've done it while Kvaratskhelia coming off the bench in that game within 3 minutes. I said on my notes, gets the assist, but so they did it without him. They've done it with Anguissa coming back from injury and not immediately in the starting lineup. They're doing it while reintegrating some players who you think of as quite important. No, I trust the players in Napoli hugely.
Implicitly.
Yeah, and the question is Garcia, and it's not that I'm saying Garcia's rubbish. I'm saying that he hasn't really done a job like this and proved that he can do it yet. So show us, and then we can talk about trust. In managerial terms, I think I have not total trust in Inzaghi, but I think I understand who Inzaghi is and what football we're going to get from him at this point, and that football we've seen can work. Do you trust them to not go off the boil? Like in all honesty, we speak a lot about Inter, but the one thing that I think that is important to note is they are very much the team that deserve to be in the final of the Champions League. Yeah,
it really upset me when people didn't really note that enough. But they are also the team that disappointed me by not challenging for the Scudetto.
Yeah.
And falling out so early. Mm-hmm. And that had a large reason to do with the way that they defended, with the problems that, Lukaku didn't really come back into importance. Now, here's a question. How do you think he's going to, what do you think of Roma? Because I just feel like now they have a lot of strikers.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we've talked about some of these teams a bunch, but Roma we haven't spoken about that much. And yes, we talked about Belotti, who of course has been his own fun story. But Lukaku, I just said it. I think we have interesting different opinions on this on Mina. I just said it on our Sky Sports News bit. I think it's an obvious compromise bit for everyone. Everyone is not getting what they wanted at the start of this window. Of course, he wanted Inter, then Juventus. Chelsea wanted cash. They're not getting much. Well, I don't know, I suppose Roma, the one team who didn't even think they were in this conversation, who are just plain delighted to have him. But there's a lot of compromise going on in this deal. But ultimately, I think it's a really good fit. I think Lukaku goes there, he gets to be the guy. What that means for Belotti, I don't know. And there's a slightly fascinating question of what would Belotti and Lukaku look like together up front that I'm sure we'll see at some point. I'm curious. But
I hope not. I don't know.
I think the idea of Dybala behind Lukaku works for me. I think it's a real number 9 who wants to be a number 9 behind someone with Dybala behind who doesn't want to be a number 9. So that is already and
then Pellegrini in there as well. Oof.
Yeah. And I think that, as you've talked about, because Roma play on the counter-attack, you are going to let Lukaku get what he really wants, which is not. He doesn't really want to put his back to goal. He can do it, and I think he's been asked to do it a lot in his career, but he wants to play running a goal. And I can see Roma playing that kind of football with those fast breaks, with Dybala, with Pellegrini. Soak up the pressure.
El-Shaarawy.
Yeah, El-Shaarawy, my goodness. El-Shaarawy I think of as like the original Roadrunner. So
yes,
sure,
me too.
Yeah. But do I think that is necessarily going to be like perfection? Well, first of all, Dybala will probably be injured for a bunch of games because he always is. So it's not being cruel. It's just the reality of his career. And I think you raised a really important point on Sky Sports, Mina, which is with Lukaku, it always comes down to how fit is he. In the end, when he's lean, when he's athletically sharp, he can be a bulldozer and he's incredible. When he's heavy-footed, he can look really frustrating. And I think that's going to probably define how successful his move is.
So here's the thing. Everyone's really excited about Roma because now you've got like Belotti, you have Dybala, you have Pellegrini. I mean, they're not forwards. I mean, well, Dybala is, but then you have Azmoun now. Mm-hmm. And now you have Lukaku. Yeah. So now I feel like then you've got Tammy Abraham coming back, right? So you're going to have like a plethora of strikers from having nobody where there was where Mourinho was taking a picture with no one's face. Yeah. Now it's going to be taking a picture with lots of faces. And then they lost Ibanez, which a lot of people were happy about. And I'm like, he's not like the world's greatest centre back, but I didn't think he was that bad. Mm-hmm. And I look at that defence and I think it needs a bit of work. Mm-hmm. Especially if your midfield is lacking players like Wijnaldum, like and especially Matic. Mm-hmm. I think Houssem Aouar is one of like I loved watching him, especially when he was under Rudi Garcia. And I really wanted him at the time for Juventus. I think that he's the guy that needs to start for sure with Cristante. But I don't know whether or not, like, as in Smalling is getting older every day. Rui Patricio, he's just not a great goalkeeper. I feel really bad when I say this kind of stuff, but he's, like when you think of Roma, you think of like Alisson Becker, right? As in that was, and I feel like this back line is not one that I feel safe in. They've conceded quite. I'm sorry, guys. It all of a sudden just stopped recording because my memory's full on my iPhone. Anyway, that's all I think we have time for because we have to go now, unfortunately. Do listen out for our own postcards. Yeah.
We're still figuring it out on the postcards, guys. Give us feedback. Let us know what you think. We're going to try and give you the best show we can, however we do it. So it may change and flex through the season. We'll work it out as we go.
Otherwise, it's Forza Juve for me. Ciao.
Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100. For a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.